The Mexican Revolution was one of the most important events in Mexico because it was an event that liberated the oppression of the Mexicans from their dictatorship. Porfirio Diaz, who had ruled for 30 years. One of his leaders was Emiliano Zapata, followed by Pancho Villa and Francisco Madero. These three raised up against the injustices in the current government in Mexico. Pancho Villa, actual name was Francisco Villa, one of the Mexican revolutionary and guerrilla leaders who joined Francisco Madero in the uprising of the current president of that time, Porfirio Diaz. Emiliano Zapata was the one who stood up for the peasants. Under the ruling of Porfirio Diaz, Mexico was ruled under capitalism. According to Orozco in the Revolution, vanguards and mural paintings, Mexico's lower classes experienced injustice, abuses, and misery that resulted from these and other modernizing developments. Inequality and oppression was evidenced by the need to distribute bread, bolillo, in the streets to feed the people. The exodus from the countryside in the north and the south of Mexico of indigenous groups threatened with extermination, and the rise of workers' movements, such as those that orchestrated the strikes of Cananea, 1906, and Rio Blanco, 1907. In other words, the ones that suffered the most were the poor in the country itself. These factors led to the rise of the revolution in the year of 1910. The Mexican Revolution and other events that happened in Mexico led to the creation of Los Tres Grandes, David Alfaro Siqueiros, Diego Rivera, and José Clemente Orozco. Diego Rivera was born on December 8, 1886 in Guanajuato, Mexico. Rivera was one of the most famous artists in the 20th century because his paintings were portraits for the people. Through his paintings, he reflected the lives of the working and of their ancestors, the indigenous people. At first, Rivera wasn't known for his murals, but for his more European artwork he did. As soon as he came back from Europe, Diego began to realize that his people needed him. Rivera said in an interview, "The way back home caused an aesthetic rejoicing to my senses, impossible to describe. It was like I was reborn." These words were just the beginning of an art revolution that would bring change to Mexico. In the year of 1907, when Rivera had went to Europe, he met Pablo Picasso, another great muralist. According to Orozco, the experiences and condition of the Mexican people during the Porfiriato and the Mexican Revolution nourished the imagination of artists and their aesthetic. In turn, these artists and their aesthetic ventures nurture the collective imagination of a transformed country, a rejuvenated people, and a new nation. At the end of the revolution, the government commissioned artists to create paintings that could show the Mexicans about the Mexican history. How did they meet? In 1919, Rivera met with Siqueiros in Paris, where they discussed their painting and came to an agreement that stated, "Let's abandon the literary motives, let us do pure visual arts, let us discard the theories based on the relativity of national art, let us universalize art. Our natural, ethnic, and local physiognomy will inevitably appear in our work. Our free schools are outdoor academies, as dangerous as the official academies, where at least the classic were taught. Substandard communities in which there are professors driven by profit, destroying emerging personalities. Let us reject the critical dictate of our poets, which produce beautiful literary articles completely severe from the real value of our works." Orozco. According to the Britannica Dictionary, a mural painting is a painting applied to and made integral with the surface of a wall, ceiling. In the art world, a mural is any piece of artwork painted on a wall for any given purpose. The mural paintings of Diego Rivera were developed on iconography that featured non-Europeans as heroes, not just him, but all the artists that were involved in the muralist movement that was led by Los Tres Grandes. Rivera used many symbols and people in his paintings that made a big representation of who Mexico belonged to and why. Rivera was one of the few artists that wanted the country to know about the history of Mexico and let them know the things that were going on in the country and where the country could eventually end up if the people didn't raise their voice. To add to that, Rivera helped out establish the Mexican mural movement starting in the 1920s. Diego Rivera's paintings were not for pleasure, but for the people to analyze and see the important message behind the mural or painting. The liberation of the peon in 1931 was one of the most seen murals because it was a representational scene of what was happening around the time of the Mexican Revolution, where it is shown that the revolutionist soldiers helped out a native that was forced to work for the rich. Natives were forced to work the land persisted in Mexico into the 20th century. The mural offers the injustice of the earlier social and economic conditions as a rationale for the Mexican Revolution. One of his most famous murals is Dia de los Muertos, Day of the Dead, painted in 1923, located on la Secretaría de Educación Pública building in Mexico City. This painting is a representational image of the Mexican culture and, more important, its roots from the beginning, connecting back to the Mexican ancestors. Since ancient times, when Cortes came and invaded with the Spaniards the land of the natives, through this painting, Rivera reveals the true and real meaning of the Day of the Dead that brings everyone united and celebrate a tradition that has been known for many years, going back to the ancient Aztecs. This painting portrays the values the Mexicans have that makes them unique. It celebrates the life of deceased loved ones. In this event, people build up altars in memory of the ones that have died. The altars are built with things that the person who has passed away liked or did in their life. It is a special event that carries important significant symbols like the skeleton, also known as the Catrina, symbolizes that anyone, poor or rich, would meet at death. Most importantly, the symbols Rivera uses in this painting to tell us the Day of the Dead is a tradition that has been in Mexico since ancient times. In the book, The Skeleton of the Feast, it talks about the importance of the Dia de los Muertos and how this is a cultural reflection of the people in Mexico. Calaveras are the skulls from the funeral tradition of America, which means the death back then represented a new beginning and announced a better condition. According to the Aztecs, it implied a positivity because it was a sacrifice to the earth goddess where it was celebrated by everyone. The Aztecs' temples were enriched with skulls. In this painting, the three skeletons hanging on the stage represent the revolutionists, in the middle, Emiliano Zapata, and the other two leaders. The skulls on the back is the dictatorship of Porfirio Diaz. In the painting, we can see how people are all combined as one society. The revolution brought a change to which Rivera portrayed in this painting. Rivera, like many other artists, used non-European figures and replaced them with natives to show the history and the importance of raising up against the dictatorship of the current governor system. Another important artist Rivera worked with was Frida Kahlo. Kahlo and Diego Rivera share common beliefs, and Kahlo was inspired by Rivera to create similar paintings embracing the Mexican culture. Rivera was also inspired by Kahlo and created a series of paintings in her honor. They worked together to fight to bring the people's culture back. Rivera was a person that wanted to embrace the true meaning of being a Mexican and how it could lead to let the people know that the events that were happening around shouldn't affect the traditions and the rights everyone had as an individual. Apparently, Rivera enjoyed painting Mexican celebrations that show people the importance of Day of the Dead event. He didn't only painted one, but more than one mural around Mexico to show how much he valued their traditions. Not just valuing it, but show that this tradition, like many others, shouldn't be replaced like the other things had under the ruling of the Spaniards. Rivera, like many others, Artists embraced and fought for the justice and inequality in Mexico. Not just that, but they worked through their talents given to them protest in form of paintings throughout their lifetime. Rivera was a promoter of the kind art with strong political and social content. My drawing name, Libertad, was inspired by Rivera's painting in the mural movement. The drawing shows an Aztec warrior in front of the sunrise, representing a new beginning in the freedom of Mexico.